We out here, man.
Let's go.
You know the vibes. Let me see. So I want to say something real quick. When was the last time
Blind man for the first time. I wanna see something real quick.
Me every day. Wishing I was blind, actually. Just kidding.
Yeah.
God forbid.
What? Fuck the blind, bro.
Hey, that's mad. And that's exactly where we're going to start this video. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the long-awaited series of Papi and Ryoiin rant about OPTC. You guys think we might have forgotten about that series since the last video we uploaded was...
It was like Kaido, right?
Feb 5th, 2022. The title was What the Fuck is Grand Voyage? It's almost a year ago. Today, I don't know what like the quote unquote like the splash screen is gonna be. Probably just gonna be a still image. But today, what me and Ryoiin, what we want to do today is do kind of a retrospective as to the OPTC Award Show. So for those that aren't aware and then follow me or follow Ryan, we have developed this award show for the past 2 years. Essentially, it's kind of the culmination of the year of One Piece Treasure Cruise, and we come up with a bunch of categories, nominations, a strategy for people to vote, and then we kind of tally up the votes and present it at the end of the year. And that's kind of it's kind of what we do at the end of the day. Like, so I'm doing it in conjunction with GGP, Good, Great, Perfect, but Ryan is essentially my executive producer, my right-hand man. He's the ideas guy. He tells me when I'm stupid. Like, he's essentially like the backbone of the entire operation for the most part.
Yeah, I tell him it's stupid quite a lot. So.
Exactly right. So, you know, if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't have been an award show this year, as a matter of fact. So, because I forgot to make it, remember? Then you're like, hey, buddy, it's October. It's time to get started.
Oh, yeah. No. How's that award show going? And you're like, oh, shit.
I was like, oh, dear, we gotta get going on that. But I think the reason why we wanted to kind of do this retrospective and kind of have, and I guess retrospective probably is a too niche of a word, but just kind of a look back on the award show itself, is purely because, like, me and Ryoiin, me and Ryan, we have we're everywhere. You know, we see things, we see conversations, we get told this and that. By no means is this meant to be like a negative kind of thing, but there was a lot of like positive, constructive, and negative feedback associated with the award show. And I think we want to have a bit of like a discussion and conversation between the two of us, because whenever we like link up and meet up, we do have these discussions quite frequently. But I thought it would be valuable to just put this discussion into a video, and even if only like 100 people watch this video, that'd be incredible. But the whole point of it is just for us to put it in motion and be like, if somebody has a question about the award show or whatever it is, we can just point to this video and they can consume that. If there's any further questions, they can kind of reach back and, you know, have a conversation with us about it. That sounds about right. So what we want to kind of
just addressing all the criticisms, yeah.
Exactly right. So what we kind of want to cover today is like 5 topics. I probably will timestamp them. So we want to cover like the overall thoughts on the project as a whole, the reason behind this year's approach as in comparison to last year, what worked, what can be improved, and what is the plan for next year. So those are kind of the 5 categories we want to discuss and have a conversation about. I guess I'll just start. Overall thoughts on the project. Ryan, how did you feel about this year's award show overall? What were your thoughts?
We did a really good job with the award show. I thought it was like, it looked really good. I thought it was streamlined, and like everything kind of made sense, and it was very like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like it was easy to like go through and just
it was
submit all
effective.
the nominations.
It was super efficient as well. I felt like. I think I don't. This is not meant to be an interview. If people are kind of, it's me and Ryan just discussing shit. But I thought I'd just pose the question. So I guess I'll say to you as well. Like, if you want to throw questions back at me, by all means.
Yeah, for sure.
I think like I thought it was a success as well. Obviously, like numerically wise, it wasn't. If you want to get into the nitty gritty to start off with, we got less than half of last year's participation. So like, and you know me, I'm kind of like, I get kind of caught up in the numbers a lot, and that was a bit frustrating. And regardless, though, I think the approach that we took was better than last year's approach, just a hands down, flat
Yeah.
out. So I think overall, it's a step in the right direction. It might not be as big of a step as we wanted to take, but it definitely was
I
like a
mean, like
step
compared
forward.
to last year,
Oh, totally.
I think it was a huge step forward.
Like we've written a couple of notes, but I'll start with the first dot point here. And I think I was talking about like the overall project provided a lot of opportunity to learn. I think that's what we kind of want to do. I think I should have prefaced this video in saying like, if you despise the OPTC Award Show, fair enough. Like, I'm not gonna stop you. If you think you can do a better job, by all means. I think that was kind of our mantra the whole time, was like,
Yeah.
if somebody thinks they can do a better job, please, like, take over if you'd like. We're not gonna and ah and be upset about it. But you are more than welcome to take over and do the role that, you know, we were doing. Like, I want to preface again and say, like, we're just continuing the legacy. This isn't our idea. This was from Ian Lloyd back in 2019. I believe that was the first one, was in 2019. And then he did it again in 2020. Then, you know, unfortunately, he passed away. And I thought it'd be a good idea to continue the legacy. So I tapped on Ryan's shoulder and said, let's run it. And he was down. And we did our thing. And last year was very torturous because we took a horrible approach. But we'll get into that one.
Yeah.
Into this. We'll get into that part in the second section here. But I think one of the parts I wanted to bring up in particular was that people were too quick to judge how large the categories were. And in the end, we just wanted to provide everyone the option to vote for what they wanted. First and foremost, we didn't pick the nominations. That was everything that released. So people that complained or said that there were too many options to pick from, I guess like the only thing that we can kind of have autonomy over is the category itself, to minimize how many options there are, if that makes sense. But at the end of the day, Bandai releasing 59 Legends or whatever it was, that's on them. Or Bandai releasing, like, obviously there were some mistakes, 100%. Like the MV, the most valuable legend, I thought that was a great idea. Turns out it was like not that
Way
well
too big
liked.
for most people.
Exactly. It had 195 nominations, but I thought that it was an opportunity to like really cement who the best legend in the game was and who the most valuable legend was. On top of that, I mean, it's not my fault they released 106 ink effects, but they did. So, like, I was like, well, rather than, essentially because a lot of them were very subjective, right? So, like, I mean, all of them are pretty much subjective categories regardless. I guess, like, for some of them, like obviously, like, Legend of the Year and blah, 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 like, for the most
Like, those
part,
ones can be objective, yeah.
Correct. But, you know, like, there's kind of a consensus for those. However, things like artwork, ink effect, most mid-legend, which I thought was a good category, turns out it wasn't. Things along those lines, I can't just go in and say, best legend artwork. My taste in legend artwork is different to yours. So it's not really fair for me to pick nominations based upon that, and then have you only vote for like 10 of them. So we went with the mantra of just pick the categories and put every possible nomination available, and then we would min-max how many nominations you are allowed to do. I believe our end was like, we try to average around like, so any category that fell below a certain number, so any category below 20 had 4 nominations total. Any category about between, we had 2 categories that had 20 nominations that had 6 total. Anything below like 40 had 8, and then 48, 49 had 10, and then all the legend ones, which are basically all 50, had 12. Best ink effect we gave 15, so about 10%. And then
most valuable legend for about 10%,
right?
Category, right? Yeah,
exactly. And then like at the end of the day, it was the top 4. So the minimum amount we could provide was 4. I'm not going to put 1 if there's 4 options. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was kind of our approach in that sense, which I think still is a great approach to take it with regardless. And And then my final point here is I thought it ran a lot smoother despite having half as many votes than last year. The issue with last year, which I think we can probably run into now, is that we ran 2 forms last year. Which, 2021, I should say. That was the nomination form and then the final vote form. That was a horrible decision.
That was not fun.
That was a horrible decision.
We spent so long trying to sort through all the nominations and everything. Like literally, we were on Discord for like 12 hours at a time sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Because we were like, oh, okay, let's get the community to provide us nominations. And we said, oh, we'll just let people type them in. The issue with typing them in is everyone has a different title and name for some characters. People also tend to not know what's come out. And those are the problems that we like. So our whole approach, I suppose, and to finalize this overall thoughts part, because the next section is our approach. Our whole idea was what didn't work in 2021 and how can we mitigate any of those problems in 2022. And that was...
Yeah, because we kind of just looked at all the main issues that people had with it, which was largely the nomination form and not knowing what legends came out. So we thought we'd just put it all together in one document, but just to try and make it a bit easier for everyone. Yeah.
So probably that's about anything else on overall thoughts that you think? Anything else you want to
No, overall, I think it was a lot better than the previous years. I do understand where people are coming from with some categories being too large. Like, I totally get that. Especially with like MVL, how you had to scroll for like a minute to get through that one. But I think overall we did a lot better this year. Especially when you compare it to last year's, having the 2 forms and having to type in all the nominations that way.
Correct. And I think the hype, regardless of like the total amount of responses, I think the hype was a lot better this year. I think people understood the systems from last year's approach and were looking forward to this year's award show as opposed to like last year's one kind of came out of the blue, which I think is probably why there was more votes as well. And I guess also the reason why there was more votes is that there's less categories and it was only, you could pick 1 out of 4. So you could run through the entire form in like 20 minutes at even less probably. So it's a lot easier to digest. But I mean, that's the whole reason. That's the tough part about nominations is that because we're doing it based on a game that releases on average, like what, maybe 5 to 12 characters a month. It adds up over 12 months, you know? So it's kind of hard to do my, because I have my own opinions on a lot of units and a lot of artwork and a lot of banners and such that might be obtuse to what the generic consensus is, and it's not fair for me to make my own decision and be like, well, I think that like Hybrid Kaido is trash, therefore he's not part of the Legend of the Year vote or something along those lines.
Because we tried to leave it as objective as we could rather than kind of leaving it to our own subjective opinion, because I know on the previous form in 2021 some of the things we had to be subjective about, but people didn't always agree with our opinions. Like I think there was a toss-up between 1 Legend and V3 Marco.
It was it Magellan and Marco?
Yeah, and I think we for worst Legend of the Year, and we put Marco in. So I just remember we got a ton of backlash for that.
I'll preface that as well. The reason why that happened was because they were on equal number. So we thought rather than I don't know, asking people, it was like the day before and we're like, we just need to make a decision. We had we had a thorough back and forth discussion of who does. I mean, it's a pretty bad thing to be nominated for, right? But but we had a pretty thorough discussion and we made the decision, and clearly people were very confused as to why we made the decision. And then that kind of prompted us to be like, we need to remove as much subjective presence as possible, which is why we approached it in the way that we did, which kind of segues us into
But we tried to give you guys like as much choice as you
correct.
could, um, and remove like as much of our opinions from it as we could. So
Correct. So I want to like also say that whilst we do host it on GGP, the other three members don't know anything about what's going on. They are the only people that know what was like this year that knew what was happening was Tony, aka Twants. Shout out to him for a lot of the back end work. Was Ryan and myself, and then the when voting started, I kicked
and
everyone out
Kruby,
of the
right?
and Kruby. Sorry, if we're gonna go the whole run, like Kruby saw didn't see he saw everything, but he wasn't like part of the sheet. I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
And Obito also helped as well. So like that's everyone. That was the team, right? But in terms of the sheet, it was Tony, Ryan, myself, and then when voting started, I essentially kicked everyone from the sheet besides Ryan and myself because last year we did the same thing. We were the only two that knew the results because rather than letting people hear the results, and I trust everyone that I work with, but you just never know, right? Slips up in conversation and, you know...
It just makes it a better experience for everyone else involved not knowing the answers, and then they can watch the award show and be like, whoa!
Exactly, and I think that definitely showed in this year's one, especially because it was crazy how, like, I think the stream turnout was larger than last year's, if I remember correctly.
Nice.
Less votes, though, more categories. I think it was an overall better production. So, like, you kind of take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. But we kind of, like, really dabbled into it. But to, like, formally said it, the reasoning behind this year's approach. Couple of dot points. We wanted to provide as much autonomy to the voter as possible. We offered a variety of categories to try something different. So I want to come to this point. So last year we had 16 categories. Sorry, 2021 we had 16 categories. 22 we had 32. We doubled it. Now, is it a lot? Yes. But I personally think the reasoning behind why we wanted to do 32 categories is just to have more substance. More things to talk about, more things to discuss, more opportunities for units to win as well. Because there's always like sleeper units or
Yeah. And
units that deserve things.
The year before as well, a lot of the same units kept winning categories.
Correct.
And so we kind of wanted to give like other units chances to win, like
exactly
you said.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a weird little necessary evil where like obviously like I mean even this year like you had a couple units won, they swept a lot of things, which is it happens, right?
Like sometimes to be expected, but you know,
correct.
we just try to.
But with 32 categories that range from like we're talking about like overrated, underrated, like a bunch of legend categories, bunch of rare crude categories, bunch of free to play categories, best and worst categories. We introduced new things like best PvP team, the content creator of the year stuff. I thought that was massive, in my opinion.
I thought that was really good. Yeah,
that was the only one that was purely my opinion and Kruby's help. Those like that was really it. But that, if you're gonna like blame anyone for picking the wrong thing, it's me. I decided that because whilst I might not be, I mean, I'm pretty active in the community, but like I'm watching, I'm peering, I'm looking, I'm seeing who's making good content, who's like got good thumbnails, who's like doing good, whose streams are popular. I'm always privy. Maybe not to 100% accuracy, but definitely to a particular point. And I thought that
he knows a lot more than people give him credit for.
like, and I guess that people are going to be like, oh, but obviously Todd won. Duh. Like, it's like, unfortunately,
I mean,
you know,
he's the guy.
He's the guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and the thing is, if I want to really look like, we're going to really like get into the nitty gritty of like the numbers per se. Let me see here. Todd won Content Creator of the Year by 175 votes.
Wow.
Which
pretty close.
Is very close when there's only 1,033 voters total.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, anything can happen. Like, if people really wanted to try hard, they could parade their audience to vote for them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But no one did though. And I think for a lot of the content people, they didn't vote for themselves; they voted for other people, which I thought was, which was a really nice gesture. But at the same time, back yourself. Like, who cares? Like, you deserve that award just as much as anyone else in this category. So
exactly, like you've been putting out content for the whole year, so vote for yourself. Yeah,
correct. But that was like kind of our idea. It was like we wanted to add in new categories, new different like unique things, especially things like best Super Tandem since Super Tandem came back, or content we missed the most since obviously like it hasn't been a lot of content available. So that was our whole idea of
or like hardest content, or like
exactly,
yeah.
So like we wanted just to add in as much off of unique categories so people might align themselves better with particular categories.
Yeah, while making it as objective as possible.
Correct. It's purely based upon what the voter wants as opposed to our decision, and then you vote based upon what we've decided. Next point there, made it easy for people to know what units came out by having each unit available to vote for. That was an important decision that we made from the very beginning because, as we mentioned before, it was absolute chaos to sort through nominations. And the issue with that, like I said, when you're doing counting, like Excel can only do so much. Everything had to be like a uniform name or similar that of. Then you had to add them all up. Then you had to like rank them, and then from the ranking you had to do this and blah blah blah. If there's draws and ties and this and that, and this time we're like no. And essentially, like there were situations where people would vote for things that did not come out in 2021. They came out later, or earlier, sorry. And obviously, like that's a mute nomination. And people didn't know that they could nominate more than one thing. That was also a problem. Because they could have nominated like 16 legends, but instead they nominated one.
Yeah, that's right.
They couldn't. So we thought, this is where Tony came in and clutched up. We thought that we would just look at from a particular ID. So for us, it started at V3 Lucci. That was the touchstone. That was the place we began in terms of that's the first unit that came out. Then everything else is after that in terms of releases. We followed the global release schedule because in 2021, at the very start, global was still in their own timeline. Now, obviously, for the 2023 award show, there you go, spoiler, we're going to be working on it again this year, unless somebody wants to take over. It's going to be a lot easier because we've both been on the same timeline for a whole year now, and we're all going to be aware of what's going on. There's going to be like weird, awkward, like, oh, but this came out in JP, but this didn't at this time, blah, blah, blah. So it's all purely the same thing, so it makes a lot of sense. We, like I mentioned as well, we customized our nominations, so we went for about a 10% rule on average, depending on how many total potential nominations there were. We cut out the need for running two forms, since last we ran a nomination form and a vote form.
And just ran one bigger form instead.
That's it, right? One big form that has everything in it, all in one place, and it makes it it makes the whole idea of it just a lot easier. More categories meant that there would be more awards, and the show time would run longer. I found this to be important because last year we finished in an hour, and then for the rest of the hour we just babbled on about like reviewing the year. But I feel like the whole point of the award show is the review of the year. You don't need to review it again, if that makes sense. So in my head I was like, well, GGP is usually about 2 hours long. If we did 16 categories in 1 hour, well then hypothetically speaking we'd do 32 categories in 2. So that was kind of my mentality of how it was. Initially it was 30 categories, but because we were going to combine all the what was it? It was like we were going to combine all the free-to-play units and the rare recruits together, but then those categories would have been massive. Like, actually, like, 150 plus for them, and that's too much.
Yeah.
And that's counterintuitive to us. MVL's a different category. I understand my mistake. I'm not going to do it again. But, like, for rare recruits and free-to-play units, it's too much, so we split them. So that's what it evened out to a nice 32 there for everything.
Like, I think MVL was a really good category. I just think that it was way too big.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. Like, we could potentially do like most valuable of the year rather than most valuable like legend ever. But
the problem I have with most valuable of the year is that there's recency bias. some legend, and especially with the way the content
And
cycle
people would get
works
it mixed
now.
up with like best legend of the year, and
Correct.
then yeah,
You know, that was like it's just like now like the way the content cycle works, you can't see a legend's value until like 2 to 3 months after the legend comes out. So for legends that came out at the very like when we do the cutoff, like they're not going to have as much time to shine and show their value. So like it's I don't know, it's a weird little it's a weird little dynamic. So we won't do that again. And then finally, people were upset with the nomination form because they couldn't remember every unit that came out, but also get upset when we gave them every unit. This is like, I don't want to make this video like a contentious thing or whatever. And look, I don't know how long this video is going to be either. It might be like an hour and a half. I might cut off right now. No, it won't. But, and you don't have to listen to all of this. Probably like no stretch of imagination. But this is a big problem that I found. And maybe I'm taking it to heart, and maybe Ryan and I are taking it to heart too much. But what I didn't understand was we got feedback that I don't remember what units came out, so how am I meant to nominate for XYZ category? But on the contrary, we got feedback that there are too many things to remember, like blah blah blah. We made it so easy. We put the color of the unit.
Literally.
We put the name of the unit. We put the ID of the unit. It was all there.
For some things you even put like links so you could have a look at.
Correct.
Like,
Banner
what
of the
is
year.
going on.
Banner of the year was robbed. It should have been the merge banner. We all know it should have been for those for the real ones. But people didn't. People just clicked on the banner because Roger Whitebeard banner, cool. No, click like that. We provided links. Same thing for video of the year. We provided links.
And
channels
content
provided
creators.
links. Exactly. Content creators provided. Like we did everything that we possibly could do to make it as easy as possible. With Legends,
and
I
so
didn't
there was
provide
no information missing at all.
No, exactly. Like the only thing that quote unquote was missing was Legends. We didn't put IDs because I think Legends are more universal. Like if I say Dex Lucci, 9 times out of 10 you know who Dex Lucci is. Whereas if I say Cy Robin, it's like 300 of them. So like I don't know which one.
Oh, you mean the rare recruit? Which one?
Exactly, rare recruit, the free to play, the legend. Like there's a lot more options there. So we thought that it would be a lot easier. Obviously, that requires the player to actually go and search. But what else can we really do there that we're not doing? And I'm not going to sit there and write out the special of every one of these units because then that makes the form even longer.
That's just going to make the form even bigger anyway. So
it didn't. There's no point in that. So that's kind of our reasoning behind this year's approach. I guess to sum it up and package it really neatly and nicely, we looked at what the problems that we saw and we were told about last year's 2021's approach, and we did our best to quote unquote solve those problems. That was our mentality, and that's what we did. And I think that we did a good job at it for the most part. Some things we can clean up, but I think we did an excellent job at doing our absolute best with what we were provided. So I can't really complain. What worked? Only a few topics here. Only one form made everything simple. We've discussed that at length, but easy money. Having every option available to be voted on allowed for more variety in votes. This is a very key point. Because, and that's where the whole kind of idea of the nomination system came in, where you had more than 4 at times. We even had problems where people said there wasn't enough nominations, which doesn't make much sense because I felt
because it was all 10% for every category, right?
Exactly. And also like you want to minimize how many nominations there are so that the same things don't just continuously get voted for again and again and again. You want to minimize how many options there are available to people.
Yeah, because that was a big concern for a lot of people. Like going into the award show, they thought that just the same things were going to get voted for, and there wasn't going to be like any discrepancy in the units that got the awards.
Correct. And I mean I think the biggest feedback was there wasn't enough nominations for most valuable legend. And I get that, but at the same time, like, what are you going to just vote for 50 legends? Like, and they're all valuable? Like, doesn't that take away from the idea of like what the most valuable legend is? I think that those are like the Like, I think at least that's our thought process. That's how we discuss things. Obviously, people might see it in a different light or look at it in a different manner per se, but that's how we saw things. So take it with a grain of salt, but like that was our mentality. And then having every option available meant people didn't have to remember what came out in what time frames, because we just said everything there. And finally, some of the categories had a lot of interaction, which meant that they were liked by the community. The way that we did interaction was in 2 calculations. We calculated the overall participation, and we also calculated the average amount of nominations. So the lowest participation was the banner of the year with 35.2%, which is very interesting, mind you. So that had a maximum of 12 nominations. The average nomination was 4.22. So 4 nominations total.
Yeah, right.
And the highest one was Best New Update Feature. That had 83.4% participation.
Oh,
and
nice.
That means an average of 3.34 nominations out of a maximum of 4. So it's very interesting, that kind of stuff, you know, because it really shows you what categories people liked and didn't like, but at the same time, because you know the funny part is, Ryan, Most Valuable Legend, maximum of 20 nominations, it had a 78.45% participation rate. And I believe the way that we calc participation was, we calced it by looking at the total of top 4 divided by the amount of nominations. So we had like a sum of the nomination. It's a weird calc, but it makes sense.
We had because you calc how many total votes were there out of like how many total possible votes people could use, I think.
Yeah.
And
so like it was like a weird calc. So it's like you look at 20 nominations, which is so 20 multiplied by the amount of so maximum nominations, I believe, was like multiplied by this plus it's a proper formula. I'm not dumb here. We work. This is an actual thing. I am a data scientist. It makes sense, right? But like, it's interesting because 78% participation and an average of 15 nominations was used. Obviously, you have to think about it in the sense of like people obviously argued that there wasn't enough nominations, so a lot of people would have definitely used their 20. But for a category that probably had the most chirp about it, to be the 4th highest participation percentage, it's interesting, is it not?
Mad. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting. So,
considering how many people were complaining about it,
about it, how people said that it was too much, blah blah blah. Yet people were happy to participate in it itself. So. I don't know, boss. Like you,
it's a bit backwards, but
it's a bit backwards, but it doesn't make much sense, right? Nonetheless, it's what we've done is we've run the calcs. We have participation percentages, average nominations, and we've like obviously like filtered them and listed them, and we've kind of temporarily gone through and clicked on what we think we want to bring back for next year. So that's just our idea of it there. And that's about it for what worked. Is there anything else that I might have missed?
No,
there?
I think we kind of explained like why we did everything, and I genuinely just think that we did a much better job this year. And I hope that kind of explains why we took the approach we did. I don't know where I was going with that, honestly. But
it makes I think like the whole point of the video is to just explain our approach. And I think it's important because in any project you do, it's super important to reflect. I know, like, you know, at school, they're always like, oh, you should have some reflection time. And everyone's like, oh, that's cringe. I don't want to spend time doing that. But in reality, reflection time is super important because it really allows you to look back. And this is like Ryan and I have had a lot of discussions over like coffee, over dinner, over whatever it is about like, we could have done this, we should have done that, or no, this worked.
Yeah, we were working on this for 9 months. So
since March of 2022, we worked on this, and it released December 10th. You know, so like that's a long time to and ah over a lot of things there. What can be improved? We didn't write dot points to this one, but I think it's pretty easy to off the top of the head. You could probably cut off a lot of the fat. I think 32.
Yeah, you could get rid of a lot of the categories. Yeah.
I think 32 categories is too much. I'm realizing it now. I think I think a maximum of 24 is perfect. I think 20 to 24 range is the ideal range, in my opinion. I think is solid hour and a half, 2 hours at max. You can actually have a conversation about the categories as opposed to rushing through them since there's so many. And I think that's the best part. Obviously, I don't know how you solve the too many nominations thing, because we kind of had, which this kind of bleeds into our like what the plan is for next year. But you either run the approach of you just offer every single option to be a nomination, or you organize a committee of people of different skill ranges, and you have them provide their nominations. You tally up their nominations, and then you take the top 4 of each of the nominations, and then that becomes the final vote. You know?
Yeah.
But
and like you would think that just giving as many options as possible would be the better option, but they got like the most backlash as well, so it's kind of hard to draw the line of what to do.
Exactly. So like that's something that we're trying to discuss and figure out now, I suppose. Because we want to, obviously, like, we're not here to make enemies. I know that people think I'm the toxic guy, blah, blah, blah. But, like, we're here to make the best show possible. That's always our intention. And that's why we're taking on this feedback, not in vain, but and being as critical with the feedback as possible to do the best job we possibly can in the future. So, you know, that's kind of our mantra of things. But I think those are the two things. Less categories, 100%. I mean, maybe we simplify the categories. Like, don't have as much... I know it sounds backwards, but not have as much variety. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Potentially removing the subjective categories like artwork and ink effect. Or maybe only keeping one of them. Like, you know, because ink effect's 106 nominations. 106 options, I should say, sorry. From 2022. I mean, it's a lot, but it's like...
And I think, like, ink effect, it also, like, was lagging people's computers a lot just because the images weren't loading.
Correct.
And so it took a bit longer to go through the form because of that.
Exactly.
So...
But then at the same time, it's like, with one of those categories, I'm always very pleased with how it turns out, because you record the GIFs, you record the videos, you crop them, you make them together, and it looks very pretty, right?
Yeah, the juice is worth the squeeze for that
100%, you know? But... that's what you have to think about as well. So I think that, like, a committee seems to be the approach that makes the most sense. But I'm not sure. Because we need to get a committee that we can trust, first of all.
Yep.
Of varying skill levels from beginner to end game.
Yeah, to get a big variety of opinions.
You have to get a committee of a large enough size so you get a unique subset. And then at the same time, the turnaround time is very sharp, right? Because generally we cut off the quote-unquote units at November 30th. That's the last thing that comes out. Yep. Then we start the voting immediately after that. So at what point do we give the content to the committee members, and then you have to rely on them to do it quickly, and then it technically then becomes a 2-form system, because you have to build one for the committee members to vote on, run the stats, and then build one and then rebuild it for the final. You know? So like,
doesn't sound like a lot of fun, yeah.
Exactly. It goes back to the whole 2-form system, I suppose. So, I mean, if people have any ideas, reach out to me. Discord, you can find me in like a bunch of the, you know, the common places, or on Twitter. If you want to be involved, probably like reach out, but I don't know if we're really going to be seeking a lot of people's help.
I mean, we do still need to decide if we are even going to run the committee or not. So
exactly. So the committee will be decided by me. So if we do end up doing it, you don't get voted, like, it is what it is. It's going to be decided by people that I trust to have a quick turnaround time. But then again, that's just one idea. I think that runs us into and that kind of Like, is there anything else that could be improved before we jump into like our plan that we've kind of conceived of?
Um, like the main things I can think about are just like the length of the form and how many categories we run.
Yeah,
Because like obviously you want to have enough that you have a good award show and like a long video to watch, but you
yeah.
don't want to have too many that it's hard to go through. So I think we just got to have a bit of a think tank and kind of decide which ones to probably cut out or just kind of adjust so that maybe they can be combined into multiple categories.
No,
Like you
I
could
agree.
potentially combine like I don't know, like treasure map rare recruits and Kizuna rare recruits and be like best event rare recruit or something, because then that
Mm-hmm.
gets rid of one category, but then that also makes it a bit longer
It
because you
makes it
have
so
both the
much
rare recruits
longer.
in one category.
It
So
makes like
like
60 something. It'd become like 60, 70
yeah,
options, which then that bleeds into the argument of like, oh, there's too many things to vote for, yada yada yada. So like,
exactly, yeah.
there's always bits and bobs you have to really think of before you can just jump in and be like, let's run it, you know?
hmm Yeah.
So I guess that leads us into our final point, which probably will be a lot of the discussion. Or not really. I think we've kind of run
We
through
kind
this
of had a
quite
lot of
well.
it, yeah.
What is the plan for next year? So at the current point in time, so we're recording this on the 6th of January, 2023. We
Yeah.
are going to be doing the award show again. That's the current assumption. Ryan and I will be at the helm, and we will, once we decide what the approach is, we will reach out to the necessary people and get it going. The the issue is, or I guess a good problem to have, is how do we spice it up? How do we make it a bit different? How do we take a different approach? Because it's all well and good to do the old best rare recruit, best ink effect, best jabroni. Like, we
Yeah.
wanna we wanna change it a little bit, and we have a couple ideas. I don't know. Do we want to really disclose anything as of yet, or
I
do we
mean, a
want to
lot
keep
of
it
it is
hush?
still just brainstorming at this point. If you want to dive into it, you're welcome to. But
We like
I
we
don't
have
know
an
if
idea. Yeah, like, so I think we've gotten an idea. Actually, you know what? I won't really dive into it too deep. I won't give them the deets, but
okay.
I've given them the deets of one of the options. Obviously, so there's three options that we're and ahhing about right now. We might combine two of them together. First option is pick 20 categories of our volition and just fill them with nominations
Mhm.
and run it, or and then be the generic best TM rare recruit, best PvP rare recruit, best legend, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Option two, pick categories, have all the possible nominations, voted on by a committee of, I would say, 12, including me and you, even though you don't play, but still including me and you, like as like a tandem,
Mhm.
like super
Yeah, yeah.
vote per se,
Yep.
and then have them make the decision, and then use the committee's nominations, the top four from each nomination, and have that be the thing to vote for. But I
Yep.
feel like that option's gonna get the most backlash because people are gonna say, "Oh, well, why wasn't V7 Luffy added or whatever it is?"
Yeah, because
When
they don't have the option of voting for what they want to vote for.
correct.
So
So that's kind of a step backwards. The third option is to completely rejig the category system and revamp it entirely. And I
yeah.
think we've got a really good idea, and I think that's what we're leaning towards right now.
hmm
And at the moment, what was the number again? That would lead us to 5, 10, 11. Like it would be, so you'd cover all the rare. So here's, if you guys want to, I mean, it's pretty much a little bit of a riddle, to be honest with you. It would be a guaranteed maximum of 15 categories before all the fun categories get added in. And that
Yeah.
is, and here's the teaser, that is if enough free to play units get released, which I doubt it,
Yeah, yeah.
but it will be a minimum of 11 before like the more unique categories get added.
hmm
That's all I'm going to say.
Was it what we were talking about in the car the other day?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Sick.
So,
Just so we're on
and
the
I
same
know
page, yeah.
I'm probably being cryptic to about 100 viewers, but hold that. But you know, that's kind of the approach we're gonna take. I think that that's the best one, because if we can guarantee that all, and when I say like 11 categories, I mean all rare recruits, all legends, and all free to play units for the whole year will be convolved into 11 possible categories, and they will not fall under best TM rare recruit, best PvP rare recruit, etc.
Yeah.
And I think that that technically would
Because
mean more categories than we had this year for
but it makes it a lot
units.
more streamlined to go through, so
Correct. And the reasoning behind option 3 that we like the most is it lets legends, rare recruits, particularly those two, if there's not enough free to play units, it lets more unique ones shine.
yeah.
Because the current issue is that when you do best TM rare recruit, only one unit wins that. But obviously, there's a lot of rare recruits that are just as good, they just didn't get enough votes. Same thing with legends. Obviously, Legend of the Year, there can only be one Legend of the Year. However, there are a lot of good legends.
Mhm.
So
this way we can give shine to a lot of units without needing to have like 20 million categories
exactly.
just to try and give that shine.
I think that's kind of the mantra for 2023's OPTC Award Show. Is we want to provide a lot more options for units to succeed. And I guess it's superficial because these units don't exist. They don't care. I know, but
yeah,
I just think that like it's cooler to have like obviously at the end of the day you're gonna have the generic ones like like Legend of the Year, worst Super Evo, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's gonna be cooler to have more rare recruits have an opportunity to win. More
mm-hmm.
free to play, more legends have an opportunity to win categories and stuff. So I think we're more leaning towards that. And that would mean that the categories are pretty bulky still. But my assumption would be that they would equate to about 25 to 30 per category, which is a lot still, but I think it's a lot nicer to look at, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and like the only downside I can feel with that is that some of the categories might lose like a bit of their personality. Like it might not be as fun to go through because the category is not as unique. But it just makes it a lot more streamlined. We can still give shine to a lot of characters that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's our kind of, that's like the most important thing that we want to do is we just want to, I think, and again, it sounds cringy, take it with whatever you guys want to think about it by all means, but we just want to allow more units to succeed because naturally they deserve it, and that's the first part. Secondly, I think it'd be, and secondly, it's more for us to break the mold as well, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to stay in the same realm and do the same things and all this kind of nonsense, So we really want to just break the mold and do something different. That's kind of
and just make it like as good of a experience for the community as we can.
Something fun, something unique, something a bit different. Like, I think that's how we want to do it, And I think that at the end of the day, I think that that's gonna be the most fun part of it. If we just kept the same best TM record, best blah blah blah, it's not as fun. People aren't gonna be not. I guess shocked is the wrong word, but like not gonna be as like, oh, that's a bit different. That's a new category, new idea. I look forward to that as opposed to like, oh well, here we go again. The next best TM recruit head ass. Like, that's cool and all, but we want something. We want more juice. We want more squeeze.
Yeah.
We want something a little different, which is kind of our mantra for this kind of year. Break the mold a little bit, have a bit more fun with it, and see how it goes. Again, it's not a final decision, but we're more leaning towards option 3 more than anything at the moment. So we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah.
It was a solid. That's it, I think. I don't know. Is there anything else that you think should be brought up? You think should be
No, I think we kind of
mentioned?
covered everything that we really needed to. I guess if we think of anything else, we'll just have to record another one. But
We'll have to record another video. And I think that, like, at the end of the day, if you guys do have questions or you want me to explain things further, just hit me up. Happy to answer things. Don't comment. I'm not going to reply to your comments. I mean, comment anyway for the algorithm. But like, if you want to actually like have a proper discussion about it and it isn't just bait, then send me a DM on Discord. I think they're open. I think Twitter DMs are open as well. So just shoot a message, and I'm happy to pass through to Ryoiin and myself, and we'll kind of expand on anything that we kind of missed, or if there was anything that you were unsure of in terms of what we did or why we did it. You know, by all means, let us know. I know that, and I want to like end everything by saying I know it's not that deep. I know that like this is meant to just be some fun. But I do enjoy taking these things a little bit more seriously than normal, purely because I see this as it's a project at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
we're just trying to make it the best that we can.
Exactly.
So.
And Ryoiin and I are big advocates for just bettering yourself. So, you know, I'd much rather like to record a video like this for an hour long and get like 5 people that watch it just because we want to talk about this topic, as opposed to just like not bringing it up and then no one caring. Regardless, people care or not, I think it's good for us to like have this as like the
just
final
get it
note.
Out there, yeah.
You know what I mean? This is our final little like conversation about 2022's award show, and now we can look forward to 2023 and, you know, pick the best option we possibly can for it. So that's about it. With that being said, Ryoiin, you want to give yourself a shout out at the very end here?
Not really.
The whole way here. Fair enough. Ryan's Twitter will be in the description down below regardless. Make sure you go follow him. Do all that kind of fun stuff there. Oh. But with that being said, I've been Captain Papi. Thank you, Ryoiin, for joining me today. That has been another episode of, you know, Papi and Ryoiin rant about something. You know, so we'll catch you guys next time.
See you in 6 months.
Peace.
Yeah. Bye.